We've got a projection to make, an interesting one. This is in Georgia in the primary, Democratic primary for governor. The projected winner, Keisha Lance Bottoms. And here's what's interesting. This is not a runoff, folks. This is a 50+1 state handily defeating her opponents in this race, including Jeff Duncan there. We had spoken with Mike Thurmond earlier in the program, 100 hours ago now, it seems like, who had felt, I think, confident about where he was. But obviously it is Keisha Lance Bottoms who will move on in a race against either Trump-backed Burt Jones, Rick Jackson, who spent a ton of money in the state of Georgia. Very interesting here, given the makeup of this race and the makeup of this state, too, which hasn't had a Democratic governor in almost 30 years.
To clear the 50% threshold.
That's what I mean, yeah.
With that many candidates?
But that was the question. Yeah. If there was suspense, there was some suspense, obviously, around this race generally, but also runoff or not. I think that was, in many ways, the question here.
But I think it's significant because she's obviously the former mayor of Atlanta.
That's right.
So
that's right.
There was a sense that she was going to do
name
well.
recognition.
She was the front runner. I interviewed former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who switched parties, by the way, from Republican to Democrat. As you and I have been talking about, the Trump factor has hung over this race because that's part of why he switched parties. And he was confident he was going to a runoff. And yet in these closing days, his path looked increasingly challenging. Let's go to Steve Kornacki. Steve, can you break down a little bit of how Keisha Lance Bottoms won outright tonight?
Yeah, well, I mean, overwhelming is the short answer. Let me just get the Democratic primary called up here. Where did I press? There it is.
You got it. We're there.
It's a pretty simple story when the shade of blue we've assigned to Keisha Lance Bottoms is the shade of blue in every single county that's reported tonight. I think you're talking about it. The suspense that was coming into this was there was some chatter that there was some concern among Democrats that Bottoms, given her record as mayor of Atlanta, role with the Biden administration, might be a vulnerable candidate in the general election to Republican attacks. And if that was going to be something that took hold with Democrats, it would be in a runoff campaign when there'd be a one-on-one matchup with Bottoms and somebody else who could raise electability and see if that's something that Democrats were concerned about. But when Bottoms easily breaks 50%, there's not going to be a runoff. Those concerns clearly weren't deep enough on the Democratic side to prohibit her from getting through tonight. And, it's just an overwhelming top-to-bottom victory here for Bottoms in this primary tonight. Not much to say about the... Look, she's the former mayor of Atlanta, and she's done this without a single vote from Atlanta.
Wow. Well, so this is so interesting, Steve, because I will tell you that there are those in her orbit who do feel like, and this is how one source close to her put it to me, that she, in a general, can really appeal to some of those suburban swing voters, as we know in Metro Atlanta, because of what she has done in the city. They see, her record maybe is standing on its own against somebody like a Jones or a Jackson, even in what's going to be a sort of an interesting, competitive, potentially gubernatorial race. Yeah, no, I mean, look, the governor's race will be competitive. The Senate race, obviously, we already know is going to be extremely competitive here. We also know that Democrats in Georgia, in their statewide success, Joe Biden was able to narrowly carry the race in 2020. Democrats won those Senate runoffs in 2021, and Raphael Warnock was able to get elected to a full term in 2022. Democrats, in their successes in Georgia statewide, have had black candidates on the ballot statewide. When Joe Biden won that in 2020, that was, Warnock was on that ballot. He made the runoff from that election. Warnock got himself elected in 2022 outright, over Herschel Walker. So Democrats, and we've seen an interesting dynamic tonight, too, by the way. This is a bit of an obscure point, but in these state Supreme Court races that we're getting some attention here, where the Democrats put two candidates up. One of those candidates was white. One of those candidates was black. The African-American candidate is running far better tonight in those court races than the white candidate is. There are some gaps in these counties that we're seeing of 30, 40 points between those candidates. So, this will be, just by nature of Georgia, it's a competitive state now in every presidential election. The increasing Democrat, we've seen this trend over the last decade or so in this Atlanta metro area. The Democrats have been doing they didn't do quite as well as they were wanted in 2024, but overall there's a very pronounced Democratic trend in the Atlanta suburbs here. The Democrats are thinking one of these years is going to tip the state more from sort of swing, a little bit more Republican friendly, into a little bit more Democratic friendly. There are Democrats who talk about Georgia as a state that long term could be on a political and demographic trajectory, at least they hope, is similar to Virginia. We used to think 20 years ago of Virginia as a red state. The demographics
change the population, toward that Washington, D.C. metro area. And Democrats think that Atlanta metro area could do something long-term similar for them here in Georgia.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.